and that was heroic. We practiced this. Not more than 3 weeks ago, we took every one of our officers, our patrol officers, and a couple of hundred officers from the Los Angeles Police Department, and we practiced the exact scenario that played out today. We played out today. And I was talking to the officer.
And we practiced the exact scenario that played out today.
Without laughing.
That's how zombie chant goes. I think. Maybe.
Zombies can obviously walk the walk, but can you talk the talk? Let's hear those zombie noises.
Okay, we have all these people getting into the zombie spirit and volunteering to participate in a government zombie drill. Supposedly, the drills are going to protect the homeland. That's the U.S.
Republican Senator Tom Coburn triggering our Washington Watchdog report, and ABC's Jonathan Karl has what is in his report.
The zombie apocalypse. This isn't some really bad B movie. It's an actual scene from the 2012 Counterterrorism Summit attended by law enforcement officials around the country. Summit tickets, $1,000 a pop, paid for with your tax dollars. The zombies look scary, but organizers say the skit was solely to add levity to an otherwise serious meeting on protecting the homeland.
What people are they going to be shooting? Are they going to be shooting civilians? Injured people? People infected with some kind of biological warfare that makes them act like zombies? With the history of our government drills in our country in the last few years, we really need to take this a little more seriously and do some investigating on this.
Grab the asset.
There's certain areas of the brain that in fact lead you to become violent. I have in front of me a book published by NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, called The Biology of Aggression, which is, it's over 600 pages long. They're actually researching to see what areas of the brain they can affect to make people violent, and they're using rabies virus to do so.
Times, and the guy just stood his head up like that with a piece of flesh in his mouth and growled like...
He has been identified by the medical examiner as Rudy Eugene.
The guy was like tearing him to pieces with his mouth. So I told him, get off.
The 31-year-old was shot and killed by a Miami police officer on Saturday as he chewed off the cheeks, ears, nose, and an eye of a homeless man. Eugene's rap sheet includes charges for marijuana possession, trespassing, and battery, but nothing that would indicate he could be behind the violence on the side of the MacArthur Causeway. The aftermath was caught by a Miami Herald surveillance camera and a crime scene picture obtained by 7 News, but too graphic to air.
Pleased to report to all of you that he's feeling well. He's eating. He's walking around with physical therapy. He's talking with us.
Surgeons describe the progress of Ronald Popo, a homeless man who was the victim of a gruesome face-eating attack. They also released pictures of the 65-year-old who remains in hospital following the attack on a bridge in downtown Miami, which show the extent of his injuries.
When Mr. Popo arrived, he really couldn't make out his identity or what his facial features were before the trauma.
In a second photo, Popo is seen walking with help from hospital staff.
Already grisly murder takes an even more grisly twist. A college student tells police he killed a housemate and then ate part of the victim's heart and brain. WJZ is live in Edgewood right now. Mike Kelgan with even more stunning details on this crime. Mike?
Vic, police here in Harford County say they have never seen a case of cannibalism, never seen a case like this, a stunning crime, and they say they have no reason to believe the suspect is lying about what he said he did. Investigators say 21-year-old college student Alexander Kanua killed his roommate, then ate his heart and parts of his brain, cutting off his head and hands and storing them inside his family's townhouse on Terrapin Terrace in Harford County.
I don't want to make speculation here. It's very early in the investigation. We have a lot of follow-up to do.
I'm sorry to bother you. Family members there declined to speak about the chilling crime. Police say Kanua's brother found the remains and his father called police. Authorities later found body parts there and in a dumpster at a church nearby.
This was a very difficult investigation. I also want to thank the FBI who assisted us in this investigation.
But what's the motive? Police haven't ruled out anything, including drugs. They say Kanua, while cooperative, confessed but would not reveal why he did it. According to published reports, he recently posted statements about cults, ethnic cleansing, and school shootings online.
Okay, the man who turned cannibal on his roommate was online talking about school shootings. Now tell me there's not a connection here.
WJZ obtained the missing persons report on the victim, 37-year-old Kujo Agyekodi, who vanished last week. Both he and Kanua attended Morgan State University in Baltimore. That's also where Kanua was charged just days ago.
Did you see that? Did you see the banner? Here, take a look at it.
Okay, this is Occupy Freedom. I'm David Laurie Vanderbeek, the next governor of the state of Nevada. In this segment, I'm going to talk about the FEMA zombie airborne rabies flu update. I'll talk about the CIA declassified your government invented weaponized polio over 10 years ago and the future of bioweapons. We're seeing the merger of law enforcement and medical care, so doctors are being pushed in state laws. State laws are being passed across this country so that doctors are expected to release your health records to law enforcement. So it's going to be mental health that's used to enforce gun confiscation. Do you understand that?
There we go. It always leads back to gun control now, doesn't it? All the mass shootings, all of the drills. Every single time Obama comes out right afterwards demanding more gun control.
14 United States governors prepare state militia defenses to be ready against Obama's rogue federal forces. We've got all this movement in DHS to establish a police state, and the reason why is because they've collapsed the economy. The government knows that a major economic collapse is coming to this nation, and so they've established a police state because they know that people will riot and not really understand what's going on. FEMA zombie airborne rabies flu update, because in the last show I talked about how FEMA had scheduled a drill. They called it a UFO crash disaster exercise, full-scale exercise. And what they're doing is they're planning for they're looking at a bioweapon release, and they've got to plan and prepare for that. You can actually go to webarchive.org, because after I put the screenshots of the event at the FEMA.gov on my website, you go to NevadaGovernor2014.com, you can see my screenshots. I actually got a link sent to me from a YouTuber, and it's at webarchive.org, where you can actually see the original archived page from March 2nd before they pulled it down. So if you want to get that link and go to the original web page that's archived on the internet now, you can just go to NevadaGovernor2014.com and click on that blog post. It's the top link.
The origin of AIDS, the first didn't really appear until around 1981. Is this the sort of virus that can be concocted by chemicals or some sort of biological warfare techniques?
Well, there are articles have been written by doctors saying that this thing smells of a man-made virus, and mentioning this Fort Detrick, where so many experimentations have been done in devising biological warfare, diseases that can be controlled, can be used on society. Another suggestion, not CIA, and mind you, in the context, the Fort Detrick experimentation, in the context of the MK Ultra.
What you're looking at here is an image of a Manchurian Candidate. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie with the great actor Denzel Washington. Mind control experiments, microchips, RFID implantation and tagging of individuals, controlling individuals' minds to carry out certain black ops. It's real, folks. Concerning all the recent shootings across the nation, concerning the impending one world government and the emerging UN agenda that they have for America. Americans will one day pledge allegiance to the United Nations, no longer these United States of America.
To get national attention, a school district there has decided there's just no time in the day for students to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Into the flag, into the republic, etc. Okay? Times are changing, folks. You've got to ask yourself the question, are these shootings being staged? Are these false flag ops? Are these pretty much these episodes is what I want to call them? Are these episodes, because there's so many of them, they all have a common thread, some psychological thing going on in their minds. Okay? And they all had brushes with the military. Okay? And so this is not a conspiracy theory, folks. You've got to start asking some serious, hard questions. Who are these people? When you think back at the shooting at the movie theater, when you think back to the Virginia Tech shooting, man, it's just been so many, folks. Who's doing this? Who's behind this? Is it the Illuminati? Are these false flag ops being carried out by our own government? Who's behind it? Who's doing it? You've got to start asking the hard questions, folks. Don't buy the stories that they're trying to sell you on CNN and all the other news networks. You've got to do your own research and dig up the facts. I'm telling you right now, folks, open your eyes, wake up. What you're looking at, what you're witnessing today is a classic example of a Manchurian Candidate, mind control, MK Ultra. Research it for yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Of experimenting on the American people with disease and drugs in over 200 medical schools and mental hospitals, a big program that went on a long time, supposedly closed down.
By the CIA.
By the CIA. Also the Army was involved, but a lot of the Navy's activities, the Navy was just covered for the CIA.
Oh.
But experimenting on population centers with whooping cough viruses, with other kinds of viruses, dragging a barge through San Francisco Bay, leaking a flu-type virus to measure that technique for crippling a city. Apparently using swine fever virus, which is very much AIDS similar, to wipe out the hog population in Cuba in 1961. You add these things up and we have every reason to ask if this is not either a deliberate or an experiment or a testing or something that's gone awry done by the CIA.
You know, most of our history we didn't have those institutions. The FBI came in during the First World War, and interestingly enough, one thing that Woodrow Wilson did, he used the FBI to spy on American citizens and actually arrest them if they disagreed with his foreign policy about going to war in Europe. And isn't it interesting how recent they used it in the Vietnam era? Democrats used it there, and Republicans used the FBI to spy on 100 different groups in this country, including the churches, who disagree with the policy in Central America. It almost looks like the FBI was designed to spy on Americans who might be disagreeing with policy, especially the foreign policy. So the FBI, although I don't think I could condemn everything they've ever done, because I'm sure some of the investigations and investigation of crime has been beneficial, but that could be accomplished through Justice Department within our states. We wouldn't reject that portion of it. But I think the FBI has kept and continues to keep a lot of records on a lot of individuals. The CIA has only been here since 1947. Their record is lousy. I mean, just think of the CIA used by the Democratic administration to murder Diem and escalate the war in Vietnam. And here we have a Republican using the CIA to sell weapons to the Ayatollah, to raise funds, deal in drugs, go to Central America, fight wars that have not been approved by the people or the Congress. So we see the CIA as very, very detrimental, skirting the law, and here we had Casey proposing a super CIA. He thought there was too much control over the CIA that existed, that congressmen now occasionally ask questions, and they don't ask enough. So they were talking about a super CIA. The CIA was used in a bad policy in Cuba. We think that intelligence gathering is permissible to defend this country. But up until 1947, it was done as a military operation. If you needed to know whether there were troops massing for an invasion, that the CIA ought to know about, or we ought to know, get that information, have that intelligence. But now in this age, especially in the modern age, I mean, we don't even need to have somebody over in Europe or in the Soviet Union. We don't even need to send powers in an airplane over Europe. We have satellites. So you can practically watch an individual walking around on the street with the technology available. So I would say even modern technology has absolutely moved us into an age where we ought to become more modern and get away from this CIA operative snooping around, actually causing a lot more trouble than good.
A super secret organization like the CIA is going to have secrets, but this sounded too bizarre to be true. Yet there it was, in print, in a respected newspaper. The accusation that the crack epidemic, which ravaged this country's cities, was spread with help from a secret army linked to the CIA.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
It was an American first. The director of the CIA, one of the country's most secretive institutions, facing the public at a town meeting in South Central Los Angeles.
Not long after Libya's collapse, President Barack Obama, through his counterparts in the CIA, people like Christopher Stevens, began trafficking guns and other weapons of war through Benghazi into the hands of neighboring Syrian insurgents. These insurgents make up terrorist organizations similar to the LIFG, Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, and radical Islamic factions including Al-Qaeda. Obama has been arming Syrian insurgents and terrorist networks like Al-Qaeda in order to overthrow Bashar al-Assad.
Let's talk about what could be the most explosive issue of this campaign if the mass media would get a hold of it and do something about it, but they're covering it up. And that is you were talking about the government involvement in drugs. There have been government investigations, there have been private investigations, and we've interviewed a lot of people, ex-CIA people, who have talked about the CIA involvement in drug operations for many decades. It's public knowledge, though once again the media are not saying anything about it, that Oliver North and his people involved with the Contras have been running drug operations, cocaine primarily, bringing it back into the United States. And there are other investigations which show that George Bush's office, Donald Gregg particularly, and the people he was working with, have been supervising an enormous drug operation, which once again was sending illegal arms down to the Contras and elsewhere, and bringing cocaine and other types of drugs back into the United States.
Long. They're actually researching to see what areas of the brain they can affect to make people violent, and they're using rabies virus to do so.
You've been keeping track of what the CIA and the Defense Department have been doing for a long time as far as using us as guinea pigs for mind control and other types of horrible things they have in mind for us and the rest of the people in the world. What are some of them?
Well, it started out basically with the CIA doing experimentations on their own men to discover if they could get rid of agents who were going to quit the department and still had classified information. So they utilized different types of drugs and pain and hypnosis and electric shock to try and get the guys to forget. Then they also did experimentations to using different chemicals to see if you can induce a person to commit a crime or induce him to do that or to do this. Of course, the CIA claimed that it didn't carry it through. The documentation we got was actually that they did that. Then we came across the overall project called MK Ultra. Its earlier code name was Artichoke, and that included 149 sub-projects. Those, 149. Yeah. And those sub-projects range from what I just described to open-air testing in the United States, the experimentation on prisoners, experimentation on soldiers, experimentation on college students.
Would these people know they were being experimented on and gave their approval?
No, except for the quote-unquote voluntary Army soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
And the way the voluntary Army program worked is it started in 1959, and the guys were just told that they would be doing experimentation on new weapons, right? And then they'd get to Fort Detrick, Maryland, where the experimentation was done, and find out that they were going to be doing it on drugs and chemicals. But they were never told what they would be experimented on. You know, they just knew that they went crazy for a couple of days. Or
you're going to have to listen very closely to some certain things because there are some telltale signs here. Folks, don't forget, you know, the SV40, or the polio vaccine was contaminated back in the 1950s and 60s with the cancer-causing virus. We saw a pandemic from that. In fact, the government knowingly issued the polio vaccine with the contaminated cancer-causing virus, latent virus in it. And I'm very glad to. I'm very glad to have Mr. Quayle on, and Mr. Quayle is going to be joining us now. All righty. Folks, Steve, are you there?
Yeah, hi, Doug. Hi, Joe. Are you guys both doing well?
We're doing well. Thank you so much.
Excellent, Steve. Glad you're with us tonight.
Now, before we get into the program, Steve, is there anything that you need to say, or is there anything you want to open with?
Well, I do. I think that the purpose of tonight in the third hour, we're going to basically, I'm going to share some amazing, encouraging words, because when you're talking about zombies, you're talking about demons, the stuff we're going to talk about is the supernatural, and tonight it's critical that people understand that the answer and antidote for fear is understanding and faith. And what we're going to talk tonight about, Doug, is really the whole zombie issue and why the mainstream has picked up on it, why Hollywood has telegraphed it, why the CDC in 1 minute is talking supposedly tongue-in-cheek about a zombie apocalypse and then denying that there's any zombies. What we're really going to focus in on is the supernatural impetus and the forceful placement of these thoughts into our conscious and subconscious, mostly subconscious, because we're being trained, we're being conditioned, we're being mind-controlled. And when you get to the conclusion that 6.5 people have to die, 6.5 billion people have to die, according to the Illuminati mandates, you begin to see how a global pandemic can be generated, and then people can be forced into vaccination by fear. In other words, generate the most gruesome, the most disgusting, the most vile, aberrant, or abhorrent behavior possible, and people will flock to be vaccinated against.
Actual scene from the 2012 Counterterrorism Summit attended by law enforcement officials around the country. Summit tickets, $1,000 a pop, paid for with your tax dollars. The zombies look scary, but organizers say the skit was solely to add levity to an otherwise serious meeting on protecting the homeland.
What people are they going to be shooting?
That's how zombie camp goes. I think. Maybe.
Zombies can obviously walk the walk, but can you talk the talk? Let's hear those zombie noises.
Okay, we have all these people getting into the zombie spirit and volunteering to participate.
and that was heroic. We practiced to this. Not more than 3 weeks ago, we took every one of our officers, our patrol officers, and a couple of hundred officers from the Los Angeles Police Department.
In a government zombie drill. Supposedly, the drills are going to protect the homeland. That's the U.S.
Republican Senator Tom Coburn triggering our Washington Watchdog report, and ABC's Jonathan Karl has what is in his report.
The zombie apocalypse. This isn't some really bad B movie. It's an...
And we practiced the exact scenario that played out today. We played out today. And I was talking to the officer.
And we practiced the exact scenario that played out today.